I lay stretched out on the small sofa in my newly rented apartment on the east side of Atlanta, my left hand holding a cup of hot tea, my right resting on my forehead as if trying to shake off the dizziness caused by a flood of text messages. My phone screen blinked steadily on the coffee table in front of me, lighting up and going dark like a silent emergency flare. 3 names flashed over and over: my mom, Linda, my dad, Robert, and my older brother, Kevin. As if just one more second of silence from me would make the phone explode from sheer overload. 6 months. It had been 6 months since I walked out of that house. No arguments, no tears, not even a dramatic slamming of the door like in the movies. I had quietly packed a few clothes, my old laptop, and my finance notebook into a faded duffel bag, and left right as the sun dipped behind the buildings across the street. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. They were used to Charlotte, the easygoing daughter, the dependable one who always stepped in to cover the electric bill whenever it was overdue. I was the invisible fixer behind every family mess. Whenever Kevin lost another job or Mom forgot a furniture payment, I filled the gaps. I used to think I was strong, that doing all that was right, that it was my duty. But now, in this tiny apartment, just big enough for me and the silence, I finally understood something deeper. For nearly a decade, I had been sustaining a system I didn't build. A system where I was the only one running while everyone else simply stood still. The phone vibrated again. I didn't need to check to know it was Mom. I could already hear the message. How could you do this to your family? And it would end with, "If you still care about us, call back right now." I didn't pick up, didn't even reach for the phone. I leaned my head back, took a deep breath, and felt my chest grow lighter with each passing second. My name is Charlotte Walker. I'm 28 years old, a financial analyst who earned a full scholarship to Georgia State University. I used to believe that if I just worked hard enough, stayed out of trouble, and kept proving myself, I'd eventually be seen. But the truth is, the more I did, the less I mattered. And the one time I stopped, just once, the phone lit up like a fire alarm. Kevin, 32, dropped out after 2 years of photography school, worked briefly as a barista and delivery driver, and is now unemployed again. But he was the dreamer, the one with potential, the one Mom hugged when he failed and Dad defended like a returning war hero. And me? The one who never left a trail of debt, never ruined a single plan, never asked for anything. Somehow, I ended up being the ungrateful one. I remember the day I left. Mom was watching her favorite TV show. Dad was glued to a car insurance spreadsheet. Kevin was sprawled on the couch with a game controller in hand. No one noticed me walking past with my bag. No one asked why I wasn't dressed for work. Not a single, "Where are you going?" And now, after 6 months of silence, they're all reaching out, like I'm the lifeline they once discarded and suddenly want back. I glanced again at the still buzzing phone. I didn't turn it off. I just let it ring. Every vibration felt like proof that I had finally broken free from the invisible rope that bound me for a decade. And for the first time in my life, freedom smelled like a quiet afternoon, where every sound belonged only to me. I started working at the age of 16. Not to buy cute clothes or hang out at coffee shops like other kids, but because I knew if I didn't take care of myself, no one else would. While my classmates were getting picked up by their parents after school, I biked 4 blocks to a pastry shop to wipe tables and mop floors until nightfall, then pedaled home under the dark sky. I used my first paycheck to buy a second-hand computer, the only thing that helped me keep up with schoolwork. No one asked if I needed help. No one wondered if I was getting enough sleep or had eaten dinner. But when Kevin, who had dropped out of school, said he needed a new laptop to start over, my mom didn't hesitate. She opened a credit card and bought him a shiny new MacBook, saying he needs it to get back on track. I was used to that upside-down logic. When I did things right, it was expected. When Kevin messed up, it was because he was trying. Kevin is 4 years older than me, but judging by how things played out in our house, you'd think I was the older sibling. He always had an excuse. He was always understood. When he quit his bookstore job because the boss was too controlling, Mom nodded in agreement. No one can survive in a toxic environment. When he lost the car Dad had just fixed, Dad simply said, "Accidents happen." And me? When I earned a full scholarship to college, the only reaction from Mom was, "Why didn't you choose a school closer to home? Kevin needs the car." When I got hired by a top financial consulting firm, she just said, "That's too far. Who will drive us to our doctor appointments?" I honestly can't remember the last time they said they were proud of me. Maybe they never have. I used to think if I kept working hard, kept enduring, they would finally see. But the more I did, the more I became a walking wallet, someone they called on whenever they wanted to repaint the house, pay the gas bill, or celebrate Kevin's birthday. At first, I believed it was just temporary hardship. I agreed to help. But a little help became everything. Electric bills, appliance repairs, gas money for Dad's car. I sent the money regularly, not expecting gratitude, just hoping they'd be okay. No thank you, just more requests. "This month's a bit tight. Can you add a little more?" I tried to stay silent, told myself I was helping, that family sticks together. But every time I came home after grinding through weeks of work, I'd find Kevin lounging on the couch, feet on the table, gaming. Mom would be in the kitchen making his favorite meal. Dad would retell again the story of how my son won an art contest in 5th grade. I'm not heartless. I used to care about the smallest things. But the one thing I can no longer do is live in a world where effort is invisible and failure is celebrated like a triumph. I remember when I told Mom I was saving to buy my own place. She casually said, "A girl buying a house on her own? Aren't you worried people will think no one wants to marry you?" I didn't answer, but in that moment I knew I would never truly earn their approval. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because, in their eyes, Kevin would always come first. And me? I was just the backup plan when things fell apart. That bitter truth didn't break me. It made me sharper. I couldn't keep carrying a family that never tried to stand up for themselves. Every dollar I sent, roof repairs, meds for Dad, Kevin's online Photoshop class, came with the same promise. "We'll pay you back soon." But I never saw a cent returned. I started logging each payment, every date and reason, like keeping a debt ledger for a client who would never repay. But I didn't intend to ask for it back. I just needed to remember how much I had given. Then came the moment that changed everything. One day, in a convenience store, I opened my wallet and didn't have enough to buy a gallon of milk. That's when I truly felt it. I was being drained. I used to think being strong meant carrying everything, but in reality, I was just sinking into a swamp called hoping they would change. Favoritism in my family wasn't rare, but the cruelty wasn't just in the actions, it was in every glance, every seemingly harmless comment, every time they chose Kevin over me. And the most heartbreaking part? I used to think it was normal. As a child, I believed that if I was a good daughter, did everything right, caused no trouble, my parents would eventually love me as much as they loved my brother. I got good grades, was responsible, never made them worry. Yet the one who got hugs and comfort when things went wrong was always Kevin. I remember once, Kevin lost his wallet during a beach trip with friends. The whole family panicked. Mom cried, Dad made calls everywhere, and when Kevin returned, they welcomed him like a war survivor. When my bike was stolen, Mom simply said, "You should have been more careful." No comfort. No hug. I got used to being overlooked. When Kevin spilled soda on his keyboard, Mom bought him a new one immediately. When I asked for a study chair, she shook her head. The dining table works just fine. I didn't protest. I just thought, maybe I don't need it that badly. But those little things piled up. When I told Mom I liked finance and wanted to go to grad school, she laughed. "That field is for men." When Kevin said he wanted to be a full-time artist, she nodded. Everyone has their own path. My dad was quieter, but he often bragged about Kevin to friends. Kevin's got real artistic talent. He won that contest in 5th grade. But when I was invited to speak at a student investment seminar, no one in the family even asked how it went. That silent favoritism made me shrink. I stopped sharing my achievements. I feared being seen as showing off. I feared being ignored again. But what broke me wasn't the silence. It was how they treated me the moment I started setting boundaries. I remember that rainy evening so clearly. I had just finished a long work week, picked up groceries, and drove 40 minutes to my parents' house. As I set the bags down, Mom was already in the kitchen, not to say thank you, but to confront me. "Charlotte, what you're sending each month isn't enough anymore." I froze. Not enough? I'd covered the mortgage, utilities, medicine, Kevin's birthday. What more? Dad stepped in, his tone flat, like reading the news. "You live alone. You make good money. We're struggling. Doesn't that seem unfair to you?" I stared at the two people who raised me, now acting like their comfort was my obligation. I steadied my voice. "I've paid everything for 2 years, and it's still not enough?" Kevin, lounging on the couch, chimed in. "It's not like you're hurting. What's wrong with sharing a little?" I turned and looked him straight in the eye. A 32-year-old man who's never paid a single bill in his life, telling me about sharing. "Sharing goes both ways, Kevin," I said, my voice colder than the rain. "All you ever do is take." Mom snapped, "Charlotte, that's disrespectful." I took a deep breath, chest about to burst. "Is it disrespectful to tell the truth?" She pressed her lips into that familiar tight line, the look she gave when trying to control everything through indignation. "If it's that much of a burden," she said, each word sharp, "then walk out that door and don't come back." Time stopped. That sentence. She didn't know how often I'd heard it in my head. But this time, no one stopped me. No one called me the good daughter. No one reached for me. They pushed me to the edge and waited to see if I'd fall. I dropped the grocery bag. "If that's how you feel," I said, soft but firm, "then I hear you loud and clear." I turned and walked out. The rain drenched my clothes, but I'd never felt lighter. The weight I carried all these years, it wasn't duty. It was chains. And they had finally fallen off. Charlotte sat silently on the worn-out sofa of her newly rented apartment in East Atlanta. One hand held a cup of hot tea, the other rested on her forehead, trying to shake off the dizziness from the flood of messages. Her phone kept blinking on the coffee table. Her mother's name, her father's, and even her brother Nathan's flashed repeatedly in a never-ending loop. 6 months had passed since Charlotte left that house. No fights, no tears, not even the dramatic slam of a door. She quietly packed a few clothes, her old laptop, and her finance notebook into a worn duffel bag and walked out just as the sun dipped behind the buildings across the street. No one stopped her. No one asked where she was going. They were too used to Charlotte, the agreeable daughter, the one who always paid the electric bill when it was overdue. Charlotte once thought helping her family was the right thing to do, her responsibility. But now, in a tiny apartment just big enough for her and the silence, she finally understood. For nearly 10 years, she had sustained a system she hadn't built, a system where she was the only one running while everyone else stood still. The phone buzzed again. She didn't need to look to know it was her mom. She could already imagine the message. How could you do this to your family? If you still care, call us back right now. Charlotte didn't pick up. She leaned her head back, took a deep breath, and felt her chest grow a little lighter with every second. Charlotte was a financial analyst who earned a full scholarship to Georgia State University. She had believed that if she just worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and kept her head down, she'd be recognized. But the truth was, the more she did, the less she mattered. And the one time she stopped, just once, the phone lit up like a fire alarm. Nathan, 32, had dropped out after 2 years of art school. He worked briefly as a barista and delivery driver before becoming unemployed again. But he was the one with potential, the dreamer. The one her mom hugged when he failed, and her dad defended like a returning war hero. And Charlotte? The one who never left a trail of debt, never ruined a plan, never asked for anything. Somehow, she became the ungrateful one. She remembered the day she left. Her mom was watching her favorite show. Her dad was glued to a car insurance spreadsheet. Nathan was sprawled on the couch with a game controller. No one noticed her walking past with her bag. No one asked why she wasn't dressed for work. Not a single, "Where are you going?" And now, after 6 months of silence, they were trying to reach her, like she was the lifeline they'd tossed away and suddenly needed back. Charlotte had started working at 16, not for trendy clothes or cafe outings like her peers, but because she knew no one else would take care of her. While classmates were picked up by their parents, she biked 4 blocks to a pastry shop to mop floors, then biked home in the dark. She spent her first paycheck on a used computer, the only thing that kept her up to speed in school. No one asked if she needed help. No one asked if she was sleeping or had dinner. But when Nathan, despite having dropped out, said he needed a new laptop to start over, her mom didn't hesitate. She opened a credit card and bought him a shiny new MacBook, saying, "He needs this to restart his life." Charlotte had grown used to the upside-down logic. When she did right, it was expected. When Nathan messed up, it was because he was trying. Charlotte once believed that if she just worked harder, kept proving herself, they would see her. But the more she gave, the more she became a walking wallet, someone they called when they wanted to repaint the house. "Can you help a little?" When Nathan wanted to sign up for an online art class. "Charlotte, can you front it for now? We'll settle up later." At first, she thought it was temporary. She agreed to help here and there, but here and there became everything. Electric bills, repairs, gas money for her dad's car. She sent money regularly. No thank yous, just more asks. 1 month, as she prepared to submit her mortgage application for her first apartment, her dad called. His voice was tense. "Charlotte, we're in a bit of a bind with the bank. The house might go into foreclosure if we can't find the money soon." She went quiet. That house, modest as it was, held her childhood. It was where she once dreamed of having her own office. Before that dream got replaced by a sofa bed so Nathan could temporarily move back in. "How much?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "About $980 a month. Just for a few months. Until we get back on our feet," he said. She agreed. The first transfer happened that night, right after she canceled the deposit on the apartment she had dreamed about. She ended up sending that money not for a few months, but for nearly 2 years. 2 years. Over $20,000 in total, not including extras like car insurance, roof repairs, or Nathan's birthday. What hurt most wasn't the money. It was how they acted like it was normal. No thanks. No one asked if she could afford it. No hesitation when asking for more. She slowly became the family bank with zero say in the house she was keeping afloat. Nathan still didn't have a job. When she asked, her mom said, "He's trying to find his path. Don't pressure him." Pressure? Charlotte, who was working 60 hours a week, was now the one creating pressure? Charlotte started documenting every payment, every date, like she was keeping a ledger for a client who would never repay. But she never intended to ask for it back. She just wanted to remember what she had sacrificed. And then one day, while standing in a convenience store, she opened her wallet and didn't have enough to buy a gallon of milk. That was the moment she truly felt it. She was being drained completely. She used to think being strong meant carrying everything, but in truth, she was just sinking into a swamp called hope, that they would someday change. And the moment she realized that, she knew. She had to be the one to change first. That Sunday afternoon, a drizzle began. She had just finished a long weekend shift, exhausted, wanting only a hot shower and a blanket. But instead, she stopped by the store, picked up a few bags of groceries, and drove nearly 40 minutes to her parents' house, just like she had done for 2 years straight. She walked into the kitchen, arms full, salmon, vegetables, some frozen meals. Before she could exhale, her mom was already there, arms crossed, voice sharp. "Charlotte, we've talked about this. What you're sending every month isn't enough." She froze. "Not enough? What are you talking about?" Her dad stepped in, voice heavy. "You live alone. You make good money. Meanwhile, we're struggling. Doesn't that seem unfair to you?" Charlotte looked at the two people who raised her, now standing there trying to convince her that their comfort was her duty. She kept her voice steady. "I've paid the mortgage for 2 years. Utilities, meds, roof repairs, all of it. And it's still not enough?" Nathan, sprawled out on the couch as usual, chimed in lazily. "It's not like you're hurting. What's wrong with sharing a little?" She turned to look him in the eye. Her 32-year-old brother, who had never paid a single bill in his life, lecturing her about sharing. "Sharing goes both ways, Nathan," she said, her voice colder than the rain outside. "All you ever do is take." "Charlotte, you're being disrespectful to your brother," my mother snapped, her eyes burning. I swallowed my anger, trying to stay calm, but my voice was already sharpening. "Disrespectful? For telling the truth? I've carried this house for 2 years while he hasn't lifted a finger." My mother's lips tightened, her eyes cold like steel. The same look I had known since childhood, whenever she wanted to control everything through sheer rage. "If you're so burdened," she said, each word a blade, "then walk out that door. And don't come back." Time stood still. I stood there hollow, but strangely not hurt, not afraid. It felt like a line finally spoken aloud, one I'd heard silently 1,000 times every time I was made to feel like I wasn't enough, every time a thank you never came. And this time, no one tried to stop me. No one called me the good daughter. No one reached for me. They didn't pull me back. They pushed me to the edge and waited to see if I'd fall. I turned away, left the unopened grocery bags on the table, didn't even bother putting anything in the fridge. My voice came out calm, quiet, but as final as a slammed door. "All right. If that's how you feel, I hear you loud and clear." I walked out of the house that once felt like home, but now was nothing more than a pretty prison built on guilt and misplaced duty. Rain poured down. My clothes soaked, my shoes heavy, but I had never felt so light. I didn't drive straight home. I pulled into a quiet gas station, sat in my car, opened my contacts. Dad, Mom, Nathan. My hands trembled slightly, but I did what I should have done long ago. I pressed block. No rage, just release. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know how they'd react when their talking ATMs suddenly went silent. But I knew one thing for sure. This time, I wasn't coming back. Not out of pride, but because I had finally learned, kindness isn't infinite. Blind sacrifice only teaches people to treat you as default. In the weeks that followed, I cut every tie. No money, no calls, no bill payments. My bank account slowly stabilized. For the first time in years, I began to build savings, something I thought I'd never do. But by month 3, the silence broke. A message from Mom. Charlotte, the bank sent a warning. What's going on? Call me. I didn't reply. Then Dad called. We need to talk seriously. The house is on the brink. Still, I didn't answer. But the messages piled up daily, from pleading to blaming. Are you really going to abandon your parents? Mom wrote. The whole family is sinking and you're just standing by? Nathan said in a voicemail. I didn't reply, but I read every word. And then one Monday afternoon, leaving the office, my phone rang. It was Nathan. I didn't pick up. But this time, his voice wasn't pleading. It was accusing. You think you're proud of yourself? You can't just walk away because life's easier now. If Mom and Dad lose the house, that's on you. I froze in the parking lot, played it 3 times. Didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I had skipped meals, sent tens of thousands with no thank you, and now I got blame. I opened my phone, typed a long message. I've paid my part, and yours, for years. If things fall apart now, maybe it's time to ask, who never did anything? But I didn't send it. I deleted it. Because I knew no words could change how they saw me. I was never the daughter, never the sister. Just a solution. And when the solution stopped working, all they had left was blame. I slipped my phone into my pocket, walking under the golden afternoon light, feeling lighter than I had in years. That night, I couldn't sleep. Even though I had blocked every contact, even though my phone lay silent on the table, I lay frozen on the small couch, eyes fixed on the ceiling. One question echoed in my mind. How long have they been lying to me? I remembered clearly. I had kept sending money during the last 3 months, even after what I thought was the final mortgage payment. No one said a word, not a single warning that the money was no longer being used for the house. No heads up. They just kept asking. I sat up, heart pounding. I needed to know, not to demand it back, just to know the truth. I made myself a cup of tea, opened my laptop, and logged into the bank account I used to send the mortgage payments, the one under my father's name. I had never checked it before. I had trusted that the money was being used for what they said it was. The screen displayed the transaction history. I scanned quickly. Every payment I made matched to the cent. Then I saw the final line. The last mortgage payment recorded was 8 months ago. I froze. I had continued sending money for 3 more months, close to $3,000, and they hadn't used a single dollar of it for the mortgage. In disbelief, I opened my personal banking app to cross-check every transaction. All the transfers were there. The money was sent. But the house never paid. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just neglect. This wasn't just laziness. This was betrayal. They had taken the money, knowing I was sacrificing, and silently used it for something else. The next morning, I called the bank, this time as someone who had previously assisted with family payments. After a brief verification, the representative confirmed, "That account hasn't received a full mortgage payment since the beginning of the year. It's currently in special collections." I thanked her and hung up. The world tilted under me. There was no more doubt. The money I had sent in those final months had not been used for the house. I didn't know where it went, but it sure as hell wasn't used for what they'd begged me for. That night, I couldn't turn off the light. I didn't sleep. I just lay there stiff, heartbeat racing. Their old words replayed in my head. "If it weren't for you, we'd starve. Your dad is so stressed. Please help us get through this. Just a few months. We promise it'll get better." Then I remembered the look in Nathan's eyes the day I walked out. Not regret, but fear. Not because I was leaving, but because the source was drying up. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Dad. "I just spoke to the bank. They said the mortgage is 8 months overdue. I kept sending money. So what happened to it?" No reply. 15 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Dad. I didn't pick up. I just let it ring, echoing like a ghost from a past I could now see for what it truly was. The second call came at 10 p.m. I stared at the screen, hands cold, heart heavy with fury and heartbreak. I knew if I didn't answer, they wouldn't stop. But this time, I was ready. I hit answer. "Charlotte, it's Dad." His voice low, tense. I kept my tone calm. "I didn't just find out. I confirmed it. The mortgage is 8 months behind. I kept sending money. So where did it go?" He went quiet, then sighed. "I know you're angry, but it's not what you think." I let out a cold laugh. "Not what I think? I sent money to save the house. The house wasn't paid for. Seems exactly what I think." That's when Mom grabbed the phone. "Charlotte, don't you dare speak to your father like that!" she shrieked, her voice sharp and furious. I narrowed my eyes. "I didn't walk away. I just stopped paying for everyone to live comfortably." "Don't be disrespectful," she snapped. "Everything has fallen apart since you left. Nathan lost his job. Your dad's back is acting up. The house is falling apart. And you just turned your back on us like we meant nothing." I lowered my voice. "Number I turned away after you all drained every last dollar from me and still said it wasn't enough. I'm not a bank. I'm a person." There was a long pause. Then Nathan's voice chimed in. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. They just need more time. You're acting like the world owes you something." I laughed. "The world doesn't. But this house does." "You're selfish," Nathan hissed. "You didn't used to be like this." I answered, icy calm. "I used to be stupid." Dad came back on. "I know we messed up, okay? But you're all we've got. We'll pay you back." I promise I let out a dry, joyless laugh. "How many times have you promised that?" Another silence. "You know, if you don't help, we might lose the house," he said quietly. "We're about to lose everything." I tightened my grip on the phone. My chest ached, but my words came out clear. "Then let it go. That's not my responsibility anymore." I heard Mom crying, Nathan whispering in the background, Dad pleading again, but it all felt like echoes from a world I no longer belonged to. I took a deep breath. I've done enough. Now it's time you all learned how to live without me. And I hung up. Not out of anger, out of freedom. I had blocked their numbers, cut all contact, and ended the final phone call, the one I knew was the true ending. 3 days passed. My phone was completely silent. No texts, no blame, no small favor requests like before, and I thought I'd feel perfectly at peace. But the nights told a different story. In the quiet afternoons when I sipped coffee on the balcony, or in the stillness after work, curled up under a blanket, a voice crept in. Not Mom's, not Dad's. Mine. Did I go too far? What if they really lose the house? I didn't regret leaving. I didn't regret cutting them off. But I feared I had become the villain in my own story. I used to be the backbone, the one who held everything together. And now, I was the one who let go. I reopened my voicemail inbox, the ones I had avoided all week. Mom's voice choked and shaking. You'll regret this. That house means everything to me. Dad, if you don't help, we have no other options. Nathan, cold and bitter. You're proud of letting us fall, over your pride. I listened to every word. Didn't skip a single one. But this time, I didn't cry. I just felt tired. My family always knew how to make me doubt myself. Not with cruelty, but with the invisible weight of duty. Lines like, you're the pride of the family. No one else can do what you do. You're the only one who can help us now. They sounded like praise, but they were just gold-plated chains. I thought of all the nights I stayed up crunching client reports, only to hear Nathan scold me the next morning. You don't know how to enjoy life. I thought of the one vacation I had planned and canceled because Mom suddenly needed the money. I thought of Mom's face when I said I was exhausted, not sympathy, not concern, just disappointment. And in that moment, I realized I was never their daughter. I was their provider, their solution, their machine. I walked into my room, sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tracing the worn edges of an old blanket from my college dorm. In the silence, I faced the same haunting question. If they really lose the house, would I feel guilty? I would. Of course I would. But I also knew I had done everything I could. No one remembers the nearly 10 years I carried the weight. No one mentions the $20,000 I quietly sent. No one asked if I could breathe when my wallet was too empty to buy milk. People only remember the day I said no, and that's what hurts the most. I'm not telling this story to be pitied. I'm not waiting for someone to say, you were right. I just want to know, has anyone else felt like me? Felt trapped by the role of the good child? Been called cold just for saying no once? I started writing it all down. In journals, in emails to myself, in voice notes no one would ever hear. And slowly, I felt lighter. I began again. I taught myself to cook meals I'd always wanted to try. I started saving small amounts, not to help anyone else, but to help me. I walked Piedmont Park every weekend morning. Every step whispered to me, I don't live for them anymore. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know, for the first time in a very long time, my life belongs to me. If you're reading this, it means you've come a long, long way. You were once the girl who held an entire family together with nothing but 2 hands and a heart that gave too much. You believed that if you worked hard enough, endured long enough, love would follow. You did everything, until you lost yourself in the process. But today, you're here, sitting in your small apartment with sunlight pouring gently through the window, and at last, you're finally yourself. You did something not everyone has the courage to do. You let go, not out of cruelty, but out of a choice to live honestly. Maybe someone out there thinks you were selfish. Maybe they say you were ungrateful. But no one saw the nights you stayed awake crunching numbers. No one saw you crying in a company bathroom because you didn't know how you'd make rent and still send money home. No one remembers the dreams you shelved, just to keep the family from collapsing. And that is why you need to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for letting them take too much. Forgive yourself for believing love had to be earned through sacrifice. Forgive yourself for not speaking up sooner. Forgive yourself for ever thinking you were wrong, for putting yourself first. Charlotte, no one is born to be the pillar holding up others who refuse to stand. You are not a foundation. You are a person, with feelings, with dreams, with a right to choose a life unchained from debt, guilt, and constant obligation. You walked out of that house not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally refused to abandon yourself. Love is not one-way endurance. It is not silent compliance. It is not pain in exchange for crumbs of recognition. And if anyone says, you let the whole family fall apart, remember this. You didn't make them dependent. They chose it, and you chose not to fuel it anymore. Charlotte, forgiveness isn't about excusing the past. Forgiveness is about no longer letting the past own you. So starting today, forgive yourself. For trying too hard. For loving too deeply. For believing family always meant fairness. And forgive yourself for the times you felt guilty, just for choosing freedom. Keep going, not to prove anything, but to savor what you've long deserved. Keep opening the window each morning, make your coffee, read your books, walk through the park, and know there is nothing wrong with living a life that feels light. Sincerely, Charlotte, the version of you that's finally coming back to life. I never thought about going back, not once. After everything that happened, I didn't expect an apology. I didn't hope they would change. But every now and then, I caught myself wondering, if they ever came back, would I be strong enough to face it? And then, one day, they did. It didn't happen in a dramatic storm or a teary movie moment. It was a sunny Saturday morning. I was standing in line at my favorite coffee shop when a familiar voice spoke from behind. Charlotte? I turned. It was Mom. I didn't know how to react. Not anger, not joy, just a strange calm, like seeing a piece of pain that once shattered you, now fully scarred over. She looked at me, not with her old glare, but with hesitation. Something between remorse and fear. Are you doing okay? She asked. I nodded. I'm okay. There was a long pause between two people who were once mother and daughter, once connected by 1,000 silent transactions and too many unmet expectations. She held her coffee cup, twisting it nervously. Your dad. His health isn't great. I didn't react. No concern, no coldness. I just waited, wondering where she would go with this. We were wrong, she finally said. I know it might not mean anything now, but I still wanted to say it. I took a deep breath. How long have you known? She lowered her eyes. Probably for a long time, but I couldn't admit it. Silence again. This time, not awkward. Just true. Some things break and don't need to be glued back together. I touched my chest. No more pain, no more sharp edges. My heart had healed, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't easily swayed by late apologies or tears. What do you want from me? I asked calmly. I'm not here to ask for money, she answered quickly. I know you already gave too much. I looked at her, for the first time in years, as a person. Not the idealized mother I had begged myself to believe in. If you'll allow me, I'd like to start again. Not like before. From the beginning. I didn't answer right away. I needed to be sure that any forgiveness I gave wouldn't drag me back into that old role. The fixer, the bearer, the savior. I took a sip of coffee and said slowly, if you want to start over, you need to understand. I'm not who I used to be. She nodded, her eyes misting. I won't send money. I won't step in to fix things. I won't fill in gaps for anyone. You don't have to, she said, her voice breaking. And if someday I feel I can't continue, I'll walk away. No warning. No explanation. That's okay, she whispered. I exhaled. In that moment, I realized real strength isn't in forgiveness or rejection, but in the ability to hold your own boundaries, even when someone from your past tries to return. I didn't hug her. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Then let's begin with a hello. Hello, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. And that was enough.
Freedom, I used to believe, was a moment. A single sharp act, a slammed door leaving the past behind, a no, strong enough to end years of silent pressure. But I was wrong. Freedom doesn't strike like lightning. It arrives slowly, gently, like the first light slipping through your window after a long night of heavy dreams. It isn't an action. It's a habit. Each morning, I wake in my small apartment, still creaky, still imperfect, but it's mine. No one calls at midnight asking for money. No one texts to say I'm selfish for living my own life. I've learned to care for myself, not just with food or sleep, but through tiny choices. I don't answer every message immediately. I don't feel guilty saying no. I don't apologize for spending time with myself. Each of these acts, small as they may seem, are bricks in the foundation of a new life. I still remember the Charlotte I used to be, the one who believed her worth was in carrying burdens, in silent sacrifice, in being the good daughter. But now? I no longer need anyone's approval to know I matter. I've started rewriting old dreams, a trip to somewhere far away, an art class on weekends, a savings account, not for just in case, but to reward myself. I've learned to forgive, not just them, but also the old Charlotte, the one who tried too hard, loved too deeply, stayed quiet too long, and then one day I realized I'm not waiting anymore. Not for an apology, not for them to change, not for a sign that I was right. I just live, a quiet enough life, where I'm no longer the savior of anyone, but simply a person, ordinary but free. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. Whatever comes next, I will not lose myself again. Because freedom doesn't come from leaving a place. It comes from coming home to yourself. Every day, every choice. Every time you say, I deserve a life that feels light.